Flight Director Vertical Modes. There are 10 vertical Flight Director modes. Takeoff, Pitch, Altitude Preselect, Alt-Hold, Climb, Descent, Speed, Vertical Speed, Glide Slope, Go Around. Pressing the associated FCP or toga push button activates the appropriate vertical modes. Disabling an active vertical mode is accomplished by selecting any other vertical mode. Pre-selected altitude and altitude alert system. The pilot can command the FCC to generate vertical guidance to capture and then track a pre-selected altitude. The altitude alert system provides oral and visual indications of the capture. It also provides a tracking process and altitude deviation from the pre-selected altitude. Engaging a new vertical mode, whether it is climb, descent, indicated airspeed, Mach, or pitch, commands the aircraft to climb or descend to the pre-selected altitude. The pre-selected altitude capture point is a function of closure rate. The capture point moves away from the pre-selected altitude with higher aircraft vertical speeds. When the pre-selected altitude mode is captured, the white ALTS message disappears. The active vertical mode message in the FMA is replaced by a green ALTS cap message. The ALTS cap message flashes for 5 seconds and then remains steady. The capture mode continues until the aircraft is within 100 feet of the pre-selected altitude. The green ALTS cap message is then replaced by a green flashing ALTS message in the active field of the FMA. The green ALTS message flashes 5 seconds, then remains steady. At this point, the flight director is in altitude tracking mode. The altitude alerting system processes data from the ADCs and is independent of the flight director or autopilot modes. At 1,000 feet prior to the pre-selected altitude, an oral tone sounds, and the pre-selected altitude flashes to advise the pilot of impending level off. If the aircraft subsequently deviates more than 200 feet from the selected altitude, the altitude bug flashes and a series of tones is heard. If the aircraft continues to deviate uncorrected at plus or minus 1,000 feet from the selected altitude, the altitude bug and digital readout flash amber and audible tones are heard. Vertical takeoff mode. Prior to commencing the takeoff roll, the vertical and lateral takeoff modes are selected when either toga switch is pressed. The FCC generates approximately 15 degrees pitch-up command when both engines are available. The loss of an engine during the takeoff sequence changes the pitch-up command to approximately 10 degrees. A green takeoff message is displayed on the bottom line of the active FMA field. Pitch mode. When the autopilot is engaged with no other vertical mode selected, the flight director automatically defaults to the basic pitch mode. Pitch mode can also be engaged by a third press of the speed push button or by rotating the pitch trim wheel on the FCP. Pitch mode will maintain the pitch angle sensed at the time of autopilot engagement. In basic pitch mode, pitch change is accomplished by rotating the pitch trim wheel on the FCP. Each click of the wheel is equal to 1/2 degree of pitch change. Altitude hold mode. Altitude hold signals the flight director to maintain the barometric altitude that existed at the moment of selection. The pilot selects altitude hold by pressing the Alt push button. The FCC commands the flight director first to level off, then to acquire the pressure altitude at which the Alt mode push button was pushed. The FCC did not actually capture an altitude, but captured the barometric pressure sensed at the time of selection. Before one of the modes can be engaged, a new pre-selected altitude must be set. Altitude hold is automatically activated whenever a new altitude is pre-selected. To leave the Alt Hold mode and climb or descend to the pre-selected altitude, select any other vertical mode. Climb, descent, indicated airspeed modes. Climb, descent, indicated airspeed modes are used to command the flight control computer to maintain a desired speed or Mach in the climb or descent. The modes can be cycled between climb, descent, indicated airspeed, and pitch by pressing the speed push button consecutively. Speed mode is enunciated as FCC lights on either side of the speed push button on the FCP. Climb, descent, indicated airspeed, or Mach displayed on the FMA. Alts in the armed mode in the FMA. Climb and descent modes. Before the aircraft can leave an altitude, the new pre-selected altitude must be set. If the new altitude is set above the actual altitude when the speed push button is first pressed, climb mode engages. If the new altitude is below the actual altitude when the speed push button is pressed, descent mode engages. When the speed push button is pressed, the magenta indicated airspeed bug is synchronized to the current airspeed, as indicated on the airspeed tape. The active FCC vertical mode changes to climb or descent. The current airspeed is referenced and displayed on the FMA as climb or descent speed reference. When the thrust is changed, the FCC commands the aircraft to leave the previous altitude, but maintains the target speed value. Climb mode. During the climb, if the target airspeed is increased, the FCC commands the aircraft to pitch down to capture the new speed. The aircraft rate of climb can reduce to as low as plus 50 feet per minute, but never go to a negative value as it would if IAS speed reference was active. A second press of the speed push button at this time changes climb speed reference to IAS speed reference. Descent mode. During the descent, if the target speed is decreased, the FCC commands the aircraft to pitch up to slow and acquire the new reference Mach or speed. The aircraft rate of descent can reduce to as low as minus 50 feet per minute, but never go to a positive value as it would if in indicated airspeed mode. A second press of the speed push button at this time would change descent Mach reference to Mach reference or descent speed reference to indicated airspeed reference. Indicated airspeed mode. IAS mode is engaged by a second press of the speed push button. If a climb is required when the thrust levers are advanced, the FCC commands the aircraft to pitch up and the climb starts. If the thrust levers are not advanced at this time, the mode engages but the aircraft could descend. Once the climb is started and a speed increase is commanded, the FCC can first descend the aircraft to capture the new target speed and then commence climbing. If a descent is required when the thrust levers are retarded, the FCC commands the aircraft to pitch down and the descent starts. If the thrust levers are not retarded at this time, the mode engages but the aircraft remains level or starts to climb slowly. Once the descent is started and a speed reduction is commanded, the FCC causes the aircraft to climb to capture the new target speed and then continue the descent. Auto changeover. Changeover between speed and Mach occurs automatically as the aircraft ascends or descends through 31,600 feet. The FCC speed reference changes and the FMA displays the change climb speed reference to climb Mach reference going up and descent Mach reference to descent speed reference coming down. A climb in IAS mode is shown as IAS speed reference, and at 31,600 feet, the reference is automatically switched to Mach reference. A descent in DES mode is shown as DES Mach reference, and at 31,600 feet, the reference is automatically switched to DES speed reference. A descent in Mach mode is shown as Mach reference, and at 31,600, the reference is automatically switched to IAS speed reference. Manual changeover. Pushing the center of the speed knob manually changes the FCC speed reference from climb speed reference to climb Mach reference and back, or IAS speed reference and Mach reference and back. This manual function is available at any time that the vertical mode is active. As the aircraft approaches the pre-selected altitude, the FCC captures the new altitude and enters the ALTS tracking mode. The manual changeover function also works in the descent, DES Mach reference, DES speed reference or Mach reference, and IAS speed reference. Vertical speed mode. When vertical speed mode is selected, the FCC commands the aircraft to climb or descend with a vertical speed measured in feet per minute. Initially, the rate will be the vertical speed sensed at the time of VS mode engagement. Turning the vertical Glide slope mode. Glide slope mode generates commands to capture and track the glide slope. Capture can occur above or below the glide slope. Glide slope mode is automatically armed when approach is selected and the aircraft is flying inbound with a valid localizer as the lateral navigation source. Glide slope arming is enunciated with a white glide slope message in the FMA. Glide slope capture is enunciated by a green glide slope message in the FMA. Vertical go-around mode. Selecting either toga switch disengages the autopilot, clears all other vertical and lateral modes, generates a 10-degree pitch-up command on the flight director, displays a green go-around message in the FMA. Synchronization. The flight director sync push button synchronizes the flight director command bars to the vertical and lateral aircraft values present at the time of selection. When the sync push button is pressed and held, the synchronization is enunciated with a yellow sync message in the armed field of the FMA. The message will remain for 3 seconds, or until the sync switch is released, whichever is longer. Note, the flight director sync push buttons are operative only when the autopilot is off. Pushing the autopilot flight director sync switch has no effect when the autopilot is engaged.